All right, let's call the meeting
Please.
of April 20th, 2020 to order. Let's try to get through the Pledge of Allegiance. And
That's not calling.
all right, Stan, why don't you start us? We're going to follow your lead tonight with the pledge.
Can you hear you?
You want to start now?
Yeah,
Yep.
go ahead. We're going to follow your lead.
Pretend there's a flag. We're
With
looking at
allegiance
To the flag.
flag.
The United States of
to the flag of
America
America,
and
to the
republic
republic
which it
which
stands,
stands,
nation,
nation,
under God,
God,
indivisible, with life, liberty, and justice
justice
for all.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Stan. All right, that was better than last time. That's all we can ask for is improvement. All right, so we've got a public hearing we got to kick off for the town plan amendment or adopting the new town plan.
Correct.
Okay, so we need a formal motion. Who wants to read the motion to open the hearing?
Do you want me to, or do you guys have it in front of you?
Go ahead if you've got it.
I have the paper version. So Monday, April 20th, 2020 at 6:30. Notice is hereby given that the town of St. Albans, Vermont is holding a public hearing during a regularly scheduled select board meeting on Monday, April 20th at 6:30 at the St. Albans Town Hall to consider approval of an update of the St. Albans Town Plan. The statement of purpose is to adopt an update to the town plan in accordance with the new 8-year readoption requirements. This action is being taken pursuant to 24 VSA sections 48, 4384, 4385, and pursuant to chapter 117 of title 24, sections 4387 and 4384, Vermont statutes annotated. A full copy of this text is on file and available at Town Hall, 579 Lake Street, and it is on our website, I think, too. I mean, Lake Road on our website. This plan is intended to be consistent with the goals established in Chapter 117 of Title 24, Section 4387 and 4384, Vermont statutes annotated. And so the next page in your packets went over the two sections, and it really was only two sections of the town plan that were being updated. Both for the couple people that are listening that might not have a copy of it. One is just to, I guess, edit the goals, which encourage and strengthen agriculture and forest industries. And there's 4 bullet points. And then the second one, I think, was the primary reason they did this was section 3.10. The goal was to apply for a village designation center in St. Albans Bay, the village area. So,
Okay. Does this, just out of curiosity, does this amendment reset the clock on the 8 years for us?
I think it does.
That's pretty cool. Okay.
Are there any questions about this?
Wasn't
Oh,
sure.
it's, go ahead.
Oh, this is Erin. At least on the planning commission, I thought it wasn't resetting the clock, but I could be wrong. I thought this was just an update, but I could be wrong. I don't know.
We can check. I mean, we didn't, when did we adopt it, Erin? I can't remember when last year?
I think it was a couple years ago. It was before my time. I think it was 16 or 17.
Yeah, it might have been mid 18, but I think it was August of 18. We were a year late.
Okay. I don't know.
That was a lot of work. Kudos to Ned. Because this town plan is very different than the last town plan we had. It was a total rewrite. Okay, so does anybody, you need a motion to adopt that, right?
Yes.
Need a motion and a second unless we want to do any more discussion.
I'd make a motion to adopt the town plan.
Okay.
That motion?
Okay, so we got a motion by Jessica, a second by Aaron. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So that's 4-0. All right, so now we're gonna close the hearing on the town hall, or the town plan, sorry. And we're gonna move on to warrants. We've got a couple payroll warrants. I'm just gonna read them all out loud and ask for motions if that works. So we've got, okay, so you've got the April 16th, 2020 payroll. That's $53,948.29. That's, Carrie, do you have any for the record why that's higher?
Yeah, so that is much higher than normal because we paid our fire department their first quarter stipends, and this quarter also included December, so it's a little bit higher than it probably will be every other quarter moving forward. But in January, December, we started paying the volunteers hourly. The officers are still getting paid more or less a stipend, but that's the majority of that because our normal payroll's usually under $20,000.
Right. Leads us to April 10th payroll in the amount of $18,530.25. So with that explanation of the April 16th, would anybody make a motion to approve both of the payroll warrants?
I'll make a motion, we approve both of the payroll warrants.
I'll second it.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Okay, now we're gonna move on to the industrial park warrant. It's all Green Mountain Power. It's electricity for the sign lights, the road lights, and the sewage pump, and it's normal. It's back to what it used to be about 3 years ago, finally. And that's $746.94.
I got one question on that. What's GMO?
I think that was supposed to be GMP.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's just, it's a typo.
I just
Good
didn't
question.
know. I just didn't know. That's all.
It's organic.
Green Mountain Organic Power.
Okay, I'll make a motion, we approve. I'll make a motion, we
That doesn't matter.
approve the warrant.
Okay. Need a second?
Aaron seconds.
Okay, perfect. And all in
Yes.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All
Aye.
right.
Okay. Dan, we've got a
You,
general fund warrant in front of us.
I do, I have them too,
Perfect.
for 4/20/20, 67 invoices, $82,995.08. The St. Albans PD Street Crime Unit, $27,625. Amcare, $12,070. Blue Cross Blue Shield, $16,346. St. Albans City Rec, $9,135. And Stantec Consulting for MS4 for $35.83. That's 83% of the money we spent. So I would make a motion that we accept this amount of money of $82,995.08.
Second.
Okay, any discussion, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Right.
Okay, 4-0, thank you. And that's gonna move us on to minutes. So we've got the minutes of April 6th, 2020, our Zoom meeting 2 weeks ago. Looks fine with me. Anybody have any corrections?
I have no corrections.
Okay, we entertain a motion to accept the minutes of April 6th.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of April 6th.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, 4-0. Now we're going to move on to the local emergency management plan, the annual adoption of that, and the continuity of operations plan. We've got fresh copies from, included some corrections after feedback from Chief Cross and others.
Aaron?
Aaron, too, sorry. So Carrie, do you want to explain it a little bit?
I
before
can.
we adopt?
Yep. So the local emergency management plan is meant to be a really quick summary of who's going to do what in event of emergency. So it's really a glorified phone list, but it's pretty thorough. The state requires it every year, and each week on our EMD calls, they've reminded us that the deadline of having it done by May 1st is still exists and they expect it. So we looked at it, but then I looked at it again today after Aaron found a couple things and I've changed some things. So the first page just has phone numbers. And we briefly talked about this before we went live. Chief Cross is our fire chief. He is the emergency management director. I'm actually the emergency management coordinator. They're virtually pretty seamless, but for the purposes of this form and our continuity of operation plan, or the COOP, it's the same. It just depends on the event. So page 1 is about the same, but I did on section 2 where it says Municipal Emergency Operations Center. For all practical purposes, who can activate the EOC or the Emergency Ops Center? It's either going to be our emergency management director or the town manager. It's not likely to be the chair or the director of public works. It's just because if the fire chief isn't here, he has a very specific chain of command if he's not available to act. So we thought that was cleaner. We made our second alternate EOC site, not the town hall, but the DPW, because DPW is going to have a generator and much more conducive if there, say, is a weather event, which we're more likely to have, but that's kind of hard to straight face right now in the middle of a pandemic. We corrected page 5 with putting some information about citizen assistant care. And although there's going to be some after action changes about what we call our primary shelter, those are the only changes I have for the local emergency management plan. And we're going to approve them together. So are there any questions about those changes? And then I'll explain what I changed on the COOP. Well, it's pretty exciting stuff, but I mean, it's helpful to have. So the continuity of operations plan is new. We didn't have one before. Some of the things that got left behind here were those titles I told you about. My title as emergency coordinator and who supports whom, really. So that's on page 4. I just listed that. I also completed the chart on page 6 that asks who's actually going to perform the functions when we have a 1 week to 1 month disruption. So it's pretty straightforward. Town clerk is doing, and Lisa are doing processing bills and payroll, and who does fire department and emergency management is pretty self-explanatory. And then towards the end, when we talk about, what's it called? On page 15, order of succession is pretty straightforward, but then it says delegation of authority, and it asks, because this is a FEMA form, all these forms are federally regulated, FEMA approved, and so the state kind of pushes them down on us. So some of them seem a little ridiculous, but in larger, obviously larger communities, it matters. This delegation of authority is asking who's signing checks and legal documents, hiring, firing, and signing contracts. And the answer is fairly straightforward, but it's, Anna obviously has the legal authority to sign checks and some legal documents. I am responsible for the personnel and the finances, and that's what we put down on the form. And that, I think that was it.
Any other questions for Carrie? Either document? Okay, pretty good explanation, Carrie. Entertain a motion to approve both documents.
I'll make a motion, we approve the local emergency management plan and the continuity of operations plan.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And also I think I put it in the notes, but we did not have to have a COOP, but I think it's valuable. It's a best practice. It's going to help us when we file our reimbursement claims when this pandemic's done.
Okay,
Do you want to start the next one?
we have representatives from SASA, the St. Albans Skating Association, to discuss with us the proposal for the town to allow them to use the salt shed on Brigham Road if our, no, the salt shed on Georgia Shore Road, if the salt shed on Brigham, you wish, no, that'd be pretty good. No. So Shane,
Yes.
Shane, Allen, and then there's a second Allen, so I don't know if there's a third representative from SASA, but please do all come online and say who you are and who you are with SASA, and take it away.
That's a mic, and they have themselves muted.
Thanks everyone for having me. My name is Shane Lamus, and I'm on the board of directors for SASA. I've been on the board for about 10 years now. And I'm here to answer questions you might have and lay out the plans that we think we could enact at the old salt shed. Yeah, we wish it was Brigham Road, but I live near that one and I don't see a salt shed actually.
We're
Not
building
yet.
it,
We're working on it.
getting there.
I don't know if Al is here to say anything about rink stuff or if he's just here listening. It looks like he's still muted, so.
I don't have Alan muted, so if Alan, you want to talk, you're gonna, well, maybe I do. I'll unmute you. I didn't think I did, sorry.
I don't know if he does.
I'm assuming you can't hear me.
I can hear you
There he is.
now. But you're
Oh.
on here twice, so I don't know why.
Yeah, I'm in the garage making dinner. I'm not here to speak. I'm simply here to hear what you have to do with the salt shed and what Shane had.
Okay,
Okay, thanks, Al. So I know the board has some information because I sent some information for this meeting. So I'm definitely happy to answer any questions, but to sort of summarize where we are, the SASA Youth Organization, our numbers are growing quite substantially, and the ice crunch at the Collins Pearly is real. And so as an association, we've been looking for other opportunities to get kids an opportunity to play hockey, to get on the ice and to learn to skate. And those opportunities are very limited around here. We have bought ice in Highgate in the past, but there's no ice available there anymore. We've used ice in Rouse's Point a little bit. There's not really any ice in Burlington. The next sort of available ice we can find is Waterbury, which becomes a pretty heavy burden on our families to get there. So we are working with another community group to work on developing a project for potentially a field house here in town, which would support hockey and other athletic endeavors. But in the interim, we're looking for a space where we could build a temporary second home, another sheet of ice. And the salt shed fits our needs, our current needs quite well to give us extra ice if it was a place where we could build at least an air-cooled rink. So your traditional old rink where there's just the air temperature is what freezes the ice. But what's nice about the salt shed is it has a roof. We recognize that there are some improvements we would have to make to the salt shed to make it into an ice sheet, but we do have, SASA does have and has had donated to us the entire inside of a hockey rink. So we have boards and other pieces of equipment that we could bring to bear on the facility. We're also willing to put in the electrical service that needs to be there to put in the lighting that's necessary for the space as well. And we envisioned that ice we would use nightly as soon as the kids could get there until the evening hours, so maybe 5 to 9 or something similar every night of the week. Where we don't need a lot of extra ice is on the weekends. And so we envisioned that there could be some partnership here if the town had interest in using that facility on the weekends for ice opportunities, because we will use it some, but really our greatest demand for ice is from 5 to 9 on weekdays. So I'd be interested to hear thoughts that the board might have or questions, and maybe I can try to answer some of those.
So we checked this over with VLCT, our insurance provider.
Yeah.
And the only thing that we got back was that they requested that SASA provide some sort of liability insurance. So
Yes.
I imagine you have a policy.
We do. So all of our players are covered by USA Hockey, which is a national umbrella policy. And so anytime the kids are on the ice or being coached by SASA representatives, they're covered under that broad policy. The things that the things that USA Hockey wouldn't cover would be an accident in the parking lot or things like that. But anything that involves the on-ice activity, getting dressed, those kinds of injuries that might occur are covered by the USA Hockey policy that all players have to purchase in order to participate in hockey each year.
Okay. So Carrie, would we need some sort of a waiver of liability for the town for the slip in the parking lot or whatever that umbrella wouldn't cover? What's your take on that?
I am not going to really venture to guess much. I mean, I think we already have an umbrella policy. It's similar to if somebody's walking right now in our park and they slip and fall, but we can ask if that was the only thing that we have. I mean, I can definitely ask in the interim, but
That's a small thing. It's just,
Yep.
you know.
Yeah.
I mean, fully support the vision. I don't know, how does everybody else feel?
I like the
Question,
idea.
Like it.
Yeah, I
Go
think
ahead.
it'd be.
It's hard.
Keep calling us.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Jessica.
All right. No, I like the idea. I think it'd be worth trying for a year and see how it goes for everybody. I mean, especially with the idea of having some time for the community on the weekends. It could really be a win-win for everybody.
Jonathan,
Yeah, I'm all for it. I like the idea.
Dan?
I don't know right now because we haven't made a decision where we're going with a new town hall. Are we staying in the current building? Or this was one of the locations we also talked about. So until I know what the overall plan is, what we're going to do, I wouldn't want SASA to put money into it and not be able to use it at all. So we need to understand what our overall picture is before we allow anybody to be partner on our property.
Shane, how long do you envision this being? For the investment, how many years would you have to get out of it to say it was worth it, do you think?
Yeah, ideally, I think the next 2 years are going to be a huge need no matter what, because we can't envision a community field house being built in that time frame. So economically, we would want to be in there for 2 years, and we can financially support it easily for those 2 years. So that's as much as I can say right now. A lot of it depends on that field house project, because if that comes to fruition, which I said could occur in the nearest term in 3 years, then we would be done at that point. But I'm not sure how long that will take, but definitely the next 2 years.
You're looking winter 20 to 21 and then 21 to 22. I just don't know that we'll be able to break ground on anything on that property before that winter, given the pandemic and a potential second wave later on. Aaron, how do you feel about it?
We don't know if we can even get in there this year, right? We don't know how we're doing on our new salt shed. So we may be there 20 and 21.
We do know how we're doing on the salt shed because we went out to bid on it on schedule. V-Trans allowed us to do that. And we have the money already for the salt shed.
We have what put away?
We have the money for the salt shed already in both the form of the grant form and have some in our savings account.
With the grant, we only have like $660,000, and the estimate was $500,000 to $1 million. So we may need to go back and ask for more money.
The grant was $376,000, so I'm not sure what you're talking about.
And we had $266,000 left. So you add them together, it comes to 6 something. And if it's a $500,000 to $1 million, what they're looking at right now, we won't probably have enough money.
Alan, where are you at with that? You plugged into that situation?
As far as the salt shed?
Yeah, and the budget and I mean, you redesigned it in Cross's office. I watched you do it in 20 minutes. How do you feel about the budget?
To be honest, I'm not sure.
Okay.
I mean, I didn't have much to do with the money part of the garage. So, I mean, if we got 376 and the 200 and whatever left over, it all depends on how the bids come in. We won't know that for at least another couple weeks, I think, right, Carrie?
Well, we were doing a request for qualification first, and then we were putting it out the bid. So it is going to be a few more weeks until we know what the actual bids are going to come in as. And to Stan's point, if the bids come in higher than our budget and we can't get them to value engineer it a whole lot more, then we'll have to look at that. But we don't know. We will not know that answer in the next few weeks. It'll be months.
This whole relationship and whether or not we move forward with it kind of will definitely pivot off of whether or not we're able to get to that new salt shed on Brigham Road by this winter. I think the town hall picture lines up because I don't see us going to the voters before March. I think we're looking at March 21. 21. I don't know if November is doable at this point on a town hall, given the current state of affairs. I mean,
Yeah, so we could just focus on the SASSA question right now, I guess, knowing that that other stuff is out there.
well, I mean, we're good at SASSA. It's just kind of dependent on where we come in with the salt shed. Stan's not wrong. I mean,
Right.
We
I
gotta
mean, I
look
would
at the
imagine that we'd
overall
have to go
picture.
back to the voters in probably August.
Brendan, you asked my thoughts too, and I think that just like many other members of the board, I'm in support of it, as long as there's a space for them there. So I think the priorities of the town being having a place to store our salt, and then if that's where we decide to put the town hall. But I think as long as SASSA's willing to be flexible as far as what our priorities have to be. And then if there's availability at the salt shed, and if that works with their timeline, then I think that, I would be in support of that. I did have one question as far as in the wintertime, maintenance of the parking lot. Would that still be with Alan? Would that be on Alan Mashter? Would that be on the town? Would we be maintaining that while folks are in the lot? How would that look? And that might be too in the weeds, but I'm just curious how we might finagle that.
Alan?
It's up to the town. I mean, if they're using that lot, obviously we're gonna have to keep it clean. I mean, that's something we'd have to work around. I mean, we try to keep the fire station open, but we don't even maintain our garage parking lot until a storm's done because the roads are priority. If you have a storm.
So this new position we created for the parks, is this something that could be added to that person's wintertime duties?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, but if I got all my trucks on the road, you know what I mean?
No, I definitely, it's a resource thing. I mean, it's just, especially if there's a public aspect to it on the weekends, I think it could definitely be worth the resource investment. How's the rest of the board feel about that? It's not a bad question from Aaron, that's for sure.
Well, I think that, the point around if there was a public rink time at all, because I think if we're using town resources to maintain the lot, knowing that we have, the resources should be on the road too, would the town be interested in it that way, or would we have to work out some sort of, maintenance fee schedule for SASSA perhaps to reimburse us at if we're maintaining the lot for them for access? So I think those are some questions that we might need to think about.
I would say if the public gets any use out of it and how long it'll take to plow it. I know we have to remember how many kids in the town that we're serving by opening that up. That's a pretty good percentage of SASSA's overall player population.
No doubt. I think, but I think thinking about public versus, club use and town resources, I think just balancing that, is just a fair thing to ponder.
I'd be willing to take a look at the investment that SASSA would make in upgrading the electrical and lighting in the building and then weigh that against winter maintenance costs. If they're investing cash into an asset that the public will be able to use in a very different way on the weekends, I think that might be a fair trade-off. But yeah, we see where the numbers come in when we get down the line. But overall, in the relationship, I mean, Shane and Mr. Teague, you've heard where we're at. Pretty frankly, we've got a couple of hurdles in front of us, but overall, I think you've got a majority support for the relationship, and we'll get these couple of details ironed out in a week or two, and we'll be able to. Well, it might be longer than a week or two before we get a firm bid back on that salt shed, but once we have a firm financial picture on that, should be able to develop a timeline.
Yeah, I think that sounds reasonable.
I was also wondering, Shane, if we say yes to 1 year, but maybe not 2 years, depending on what happens with that property, it'll work it to you guys.
I think it'll depend on the timeline. So if there's some sort of scenario where the new salt shed is available to the town, but not till say January, It probably wouldn't make sense to invest in the temporary rink if it was only part of next winter. But if we could come to an agreement where it was all of next winter, I think my board would support fixing the salt shed, even if it was for one complete winter. I don't think they would support. I'm just thinking about construction schedules, right? Does the town think it's likely you're going to have a salt shed built before salt season?
We're
I
hopeful.
mean, if we move forward with it, even if we had to go, so here's how I envision this playing out, and somebody tell me if you think I'm wrong. We get the bids back in what, 3 weeks, Carrie, roughly? Maybe
It's,
4?
it's longer than that, but in the next
say-
few months, yes.
We'll say June.
Mhm.
We figure out the financial picture. If we can green light it, we'll green light it as soon as we get a contract in place with whoever GCs the project. And then we'll build it out before fall. We'll have salt offloaded, but if we have a budget problem and we're in a number crunch, we have to go back to the voters to get another however much money from the local option tax infrastructure reserve fund. We probably have to look at doing that in August during the August primaries. Yeah, so we probably get the money. I mean, I would think the voters would approve it. So we'd look at building that out because we know what the bids were at that point. I would think no matter what, we're probably going to be able to get the thing built by winter. Whether or not we're operational in it before maybe the end of October. I mean, winter to you is what? Like, is it literally December 15th on? I mean, when would you want to be in the building for a full
We would,
winter?
yeah, we would want to be in by Thanksgiving.
And you need probably a few weeks before that to do your fit up and set up your rink.
Ideally, what would happen is if you guys find out your new home is available, and it's going to happen, that we could start working in the summertime, at least putting the electrical in, for example. And then we'd use maybe the 2 weeks before Thanksgiving exactly to do sort of rink installation.
Right.
Yeah.
We just have some questions to answer by the sounds of it.
Yeah, sounds like it too. Yeah.
That sound like a reasonable place to leave this discussion off to everybody?
It's good with me.
Hey, Shane, more than welcome to stay. But I wouldn't blame you if you wanted to sign off.
Yeah,
It's
I
like
think I'm gonna
a,
get some supper.
Thanks.
Hey, thank you all for all that you do, though. Really, thank you.
Well, thanks, Shane.
Yeah.
Have a good one.
he's like,
Have a good night.
yeah, pass, hard pass.
You don't want to stay?
It's fun. Parks and Recreation.
Oh, I have sad news. Oh, Carrie, I almost shed a tear when I opened that email. That's terrible.
What
We have
part?
regretfully accepted the resignation of one planning commission chairman, Grant Henderson, who is now Maple Run School Board Director. Jump ship, the traitor.
Yeah, he ran for office.
Mhm.
No, I know.
Those of us who worked with Grant know him firsthand know that he's a certifiable genius. He was an asset to the town from day one. We appreciate every minute of his service and his commitment to making St. Albans a better place, and we wish him luck with his future endeavors at the school district. Seriously.
Right, so that's an update from what was put in the red pen that I said that Grant and Aaron were going to stay on the planning commission, because I think there was some miscommunication. Members of the planning commission thought maybe they could just add members to the planning commission, not as an alternate, but just add members. And I don't think it was the intention of the select board to increase the number of planning commissioners right now. We can, I checked our charter, but we've had a hard time getting 5 members, so I really am reticent to increase.
So the idea now is Hannah Rounds confirmed that she wants to be appointed to the planning commission. She spoke with Carrie on town meeting day and had expressed interest in getting involved with the town, confirmed that her interest lies with the planning commission. And Grant, to save us a debate between going from 5 to 7 members, decided that he would resign his seat. And now what we have in front of us is appointing Hannah Rounds to finish Grant's term, which ends in 2021, Carrie? Right date?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So
So I'd be looking for a motion to appoint Hannah Rounds as a planning commissioner through next year.
Hi, this is Erin, and I'll make a motion to appoint Hannah Rounds to Grant Henderson's planning commission seat to the end of his term.
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, it's 4-0. I'm gonna write something quick, if we could send it out to everybody, thanking Grant for his years of service tomorrow, if that works for you, Carrie.
Yep.
Yeah,
recognition.
I think that's a great idea. Grant's been a great leader of the planning commission, and as a person who's still on the planning commission, his absence will be duly noted and greatly missed. So just wanted to thank Grant for his service and, wish him luck on the school board.
We need to send Brent one too.
Yep, no, we'll take care of that one tomorrow too. That's a good point. So, on to public comment. I don't see, unless Mr. T wants to be unmuted and make a comment, but I don't think that, I don't know, maybe not. So anybody on the board want to do the thing where we quasi make a comment as a member of the public? That's happened before. Hearing nothing, we're gonna move on to the Liquor Control Board. So if somebody could make the motion in the second.
I'll make a motion, we recess the select board meeting and open as the liquor control board.
Right on.
I'll second it.
Right on.
All in favor?
Aye.
Right. Okay, Liquor Control Board. So we've got first class, third class, and outside consumption for Bayside Pavilion. And I'm not seeing any comments from our wonderful clerk treasurer.
Nope, she confirms. She's in the room. She said there's no issues.
comments.
No
Okay,
comment.
so when we make the motion to approve this, do we have to have it so that I can sign on behalf of the board and attach the minutes like we're doing for warrants?
No, I need at least 3 signatures, so if, if somebody could come in,
Just pick the 3 people that can come in because she'll
Yeah.
let them in. As long as you're symptom-free and you wear a mask.
the DLC has extended their 2019 liquor license renewals in case these aren't in on time, so we have some time
You have a little bit of
for
time.
3 people to come in and sign.
Can you hear Anna when she's talking?
Yeah, absolutely.
I will not repeat it.
So we got 1, and we need 2 volunteers.
I
Jonathan?
can come in on Wednesday.
Okay,
Okay, so me, Jessica, Jonathan.
Thank you.
All right, we'll get that done by Wednesday. All right, so anybody want to make a motion to approve these 3 licenses from Bayside?
I'll make a motion to approve the licenses for Bayside.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Perfect. All right, so we need a motion to adjourn as the Liquor Control Board and reconvene as the Select Board.
I'll make a motion to close the Liquor Control Board and reconvene the Select Board.
Second,
I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Perfect. Okay, agenda item 10. So we all, I think, one way or another, either through social media or the local press or the grapevine, have heard about the ordinance and enforcement piece that the city council put into play last Monday. We are now considering our own. We've got information from Chief Taylor. He said that the general consensus from the police department seems to be that they would like a tool. Education would always be first, but they would like a tool in the toolbox to be able to remedy anybody who is not accepting the education or the guidance, to be able to enforce the governor's executive order. I have mixed feelings on it, so I'm just going to open the floor up to anybody who has an opinion they would like to share with everyone.
I don't have an opinion, but I was asked a question that might be relevant, so I'll share it with others that, the intent for Chief Taylor was not to use this ordinance to enforce business or commercial violations, that he was going to continue to send that to the AG's office. The intent was more for the cluster of people standing on the street corner or someone giving their officers a really difficult time. So that clarification was asked earlier. And he had an incident come up today, otherwise he would have been here to answer questions.
Eric, you have the draft in front of you. Could you read the first, second, third, and subsequent offense, the monetary fines out loud for the record?
First offense by any person, business, it says business or organization, but I think that's a CYA. It'd be punishable by a minimum fine of $100, a maximum fine of $500, and a waiver penalty fine of $100. Second offense by any person, business, or organization shall be punishable by a minimum fine of $250, max $500, and a waiver penalty of $250. Third offense, same verbiage, says that shall be punishable by a minimum fine of $500. It doesn't have a range.
Dan, do you want to comment on it?
I have a question on it. And I would approve this in a minute. But the Attorney General office will now, once we sign this ordinance, they will have nothing to do with this enforcement. And
I'm not sure about that. I thought some cases might still be
well,
sent there.
that's what is, that paper you gave us, Sherry? Harry, not Sherry. My daughter is Sherry.
Who's Sherry, Stan?
Daughter.
In that paper you gave us from the Attorney General's office, they have, one of the fines is for civil enforcement, and the next fine is for criminal enforcement. And I don't see that in the ordinance that we're going to sign. So does that mean when the police arrest somebody, it will be a criminal charge and not a civil charge? That means it would go on their record? I'm thinking of a young person now. He's in a group of 10 or something, and he gets mounting off, and he gets a criminal charge, and it'll take forever for him to get it off his record.
It was my impression that they're not going to be arresting anyone, and there's not jail time. This is really,
Civil ticket, isn't it?
yeah. They're only talking about fines, not actually arresting someone. I mean, if
But
somebody didn't pay
It
the
says
fine.
criminal enforcement, Carrie.
Where does it
Does
say?
that go on your record?
Well,
Is that in our ordinance or in the document from the AG's office, Stan?
Huh?
Is that what you're reading? Is that in
Yes.
is that in a document from the AG or our ordinance?
That's the document from the Attorney General's office.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
our ordinance.
Right now, they handle it all. In the bottom line, it says, once a town does a local ordinance, they drop out and they leave it up to the town district attorney, I believe, to handle.
so Aaron, I know you were trying to get through a second ago.
I just saw that in the proposed ordinance, it says that the person would be subject to civil penalties. So, but I think that was just to answer if it was whether our ordinance would be covering civil and or criminal. But that wasn't an answer or a comment to Stan's last comment around whether this nullifies the AG's involvement. And I would be interested in knowing how this might impact the AG's involvement.
AG, for all intents and purposes, hasn't been involved at all. Even with the commercial business, we asked them to investigate. So, I mean, what Gary said to me very pointedly was this is an intent to give them a little more teeth in the form of a ticket, but that was it. He did not anticipate bringing people to actually bringing them to jail because they violated the stay-at-home order.
I don't know, Jessica, how do you feel about it?
I have really mixed feelings about it. Mostly because I feel like most people are following the rules. You know, the curve is flattening, the numbers are going down considerably. And I do wish that first offense didn't have a fine attached to it. I'd prefer the first offense to just be a verbal warning to people.
That's what
I just wonder if by the time this is passed, the governor's going to start opening things up anyway, the way things are going. And I also hate to, sorry, just one more thing. I also hate to put fines on people when they're already struggling, when people are without jobs.
Amen.
Hey, Jonathan?
Jessica pretty much summed it up. I don't really want to impose more fines on people. I mean, the people that are going to do it, you're going to find them and they're just going to do it elsewhere or around the corner, you know, have a group meeting or whatever. I don't think this is really helpful. I mean, I do like paragraph C the protecting the police and other first responders. I do like that portion of it, but the rest of it, I'm not really in agreement with.
Just for clarification, COVID-19 Emergency Regulation 1A, the first bullet point is the education piece. Their first go-to is the purpose of this regulation is to preserve public health and safety in every incident. The primary goal is to educate and garner voluntary compliance. So he said that that was the case, and that's why it's first, because that is their first go-to. They're not going to be handing out tickets that are going to be then used for littering unless someone's really giving them a hard time. That was the intent.
Aaron, what are your thoughts?
I like the intent of it as far as, providing the police with some more than just words. I think it gets at the seriousness of addressing COVID-19, and that I appreciate. I think, I am also concerned about the fee aspect with this ordinance. I think that, if Chief Taylor was here, I would have been interested in knowing how having the ordinance in place has worked out for the city, and also to know a little bit more about the experience other than the commercial property in St. Albans Town, what his experiences or his officer's experience has been like with the stay home, stay safe order and working with the public. I think there are certainly places in the town where people can congregate. There are fewer places, I think, that are natural, more congregating places than in the city. So I just would, before we adopted basically the same ordinance, I'd want to know more about what the actual experience has been like for the public and for the police with it.
Okay. Stan, the last person on my list to ask. Stan, do you have an opinion on it one way or the other?
My opinion on it. I don't approve of anybody, and that they should be arrested, spitting at first responders, be they police officers, healthcare workers, or just me passing on the street. If somebody's going to throw body fluids at me, I would probably get arrested for assault. So I don't really care for,
Right.
all these fines. I think there's got to be some kind of something else that they could arrest them for other than this civil or whatever we're trying to do. I don't understand completely. I just don't approve of people spitting at people. So if Chief Taylor was here, he could tell us, does that occur, or is it just groups not following procedures? I don't know how much of a problem we have with people spitting or throwing body fluid at them. I know in the prison, which is something different than what we're talking about, there's a problem, but I don't know how much of a problem this is.
Well, and is there
We need
another
an ordinance.
Is there a
Pardon?
rule in place already? If someone spits at a police officer in general, there must be some penalty for that.
I would think so.
I think there is, but I
That's assault, isn't it?
Yeah.
thought it was already, but I don't know exactly.
I mean, I don't know. I guess we're to the point now where I agree with Jessica. Social distancing is working, and the vast majority of town residents and businesses are doing more than what's been asked to comply. The curve is flattening. Testing numbers at NMC are going down. We're not out of the woods yet. Now I guess we're at the point where, I don't know, I feel like this emergency regulation is a pretty an emotional piece of policy. I think it's going to make people emotional one way or the other. That's a factor in my mind. I agree. I fully approve of Regulation 1C.
Mhm.
But that's really, I really don't feel like now is the time to threaten a pretty compliant public with fines.
And I wonder too, I mean, if we're having our special meeting or the meeting around, I know it's more about the police contract, but if I don't know if Chief Taylor or if the police review board is going to be there, if after we discuss this tonight and if we are taking a vote or you know, whatever decision we make, if Chief Taylor feels like that after hearing or reading the minutes from this meeting, like we needed more information to make a different decision, could we talk about it at that meeting again if there's still a need for this sort of ordinance? Or I don't know what the rest of the board thinks about that.
Practically speaking, you're already going to have like a 4 to 5 hour meeting that Monday night, and I would suggest you probably don't want any more time added to that meeting. You're going to be meeting with each other first for an hour and a half at least, and
Here's
then
what I'd be willing to do tonight.
jointly with the PC.
Regulation 1, we've got A, B, C, D. I think we're all in agreement with C. And I think D could be attached to C, saying that every time somebody did that separate incident and the fines start over. I think we should scratch A and B and make C and D the new A and B and approve that.
Well,
think
A is
that's-
the one.
Well, A is valuable.
Yeah, I like A.
What? Okay, yeah.
A is the voluntary compliance piece. So I'd
Yeah.
like to keep that in there.
What the,
So this was based off of Burlington.
okay, yeah, my bad. All right, so we're just gonna strike B. Sorry,
Yeah.
I got confused.
Yes, Aaron, it was largely based off of Burlington. Gary
So-
was,
And I think wasn't the state's AG had kind of maybe not signed off on it, I don't know if I'm using the right term, but if we kind of line veto parts of this ordinance, does that call into question whether it's still, you know, kind of acceptable in the AG's eyes? Or do you think that's okay for us to do that?
I think if you delete B, you might as well just move on and not approve any of it, frankly. I mean, the point was that there's a small minority of people who aren't behaving, and the police department wanted a little bit more teeth to be able to address those super naughties that are not behaving. And so if you eliminate B, I don't see the value of the ordinance itself, actually, at this point.
The only other, so if we can't reach a consensus tonight, I think there's still value in perhaps talking about or bringing Chief Taylor or talking about this again at a future meeting, only because with the governor loosening or slowly turning the spigot on with businesses, I think there's a potential, and I think this is where we need to hear from Chief Taylor about his experience as this happens, but as things get loose, I think there could be a potential for more people to misunderstand and perhaps test the limits of social distancing, because some things are open and some things aren't. And I think there might be confusion from the public on that. So even if we can't come to a decision tonight, I would be interested in talking with the chief about this in the future.
Okay. Your next meeting is May 4th, the regular meeting. He certainly could come to that. And
Social distancing isn't going anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I would even be okay with it if we kept B, but the 1 didn't have any fines. Like B1 didn't have any fines. Because I know the A says education is the priority, but just having it say first offense, there's a fine. I mean, they could say the education and still slap them with a fine. I'd rather give people a few warnings before they get a fine. I don't know if we can change.
I'm sure you could change that part if it made a difference for others and yourself.
Then would the first real fine then for that person go up to 250? So they would lose out on that 100 level.
I think you shift everything down one and make a new one.
Yeah, I mean, and Chief Taylor said to me, the goal here is not to collect funds, and he's not even sure he's going to collect any funds. That wasn't the goal. The goal was to be able to say, listen, you know, we asked you nicely once or twice, and if you're not going to comply, here's a ticket. And for some, it might make a difference. He is not under any illusion it's gonna collect money, or a lot of it anyway.
I think if it's approved, and I'm fully envisioning not being able to vote on it, I think that's a pretty good thing for me. I don't know how I'll vote. I think I'd want to put something in here saying that any funds collected by any tickets should go to purchasing PPE for basically everybody in C. Any law enforcement officer, first responders, or healthcare professionals. I think if we raise even $2,000 over a 6-month stretch for this ordinance, that $2,000 should go straight to purchasing protective. I don't know, that's just a thought, but anybody have anything they want to say?
Brendan.
Yeah.
I think when you dedicate money, fines to an organization, especially the police department, the person that gets arrested, his lawyer is going to say, the only reason I got arrested is because they need $500 or they need $1,000.
No, I would just say that the money would go not to the police department, but to a fund to purchase PPE, whether it comes to the town and we spend that, every cent of that fine on hand sanitizer, and we disperse it to Walter Cruel, the police department, and NMC. I think that's fair. I don't want to approve an ordinance that allows our local police department to fine our residents unless there's some type of a positive spin to it. And like Jessica said, it has to emphasize education first and foremost, the warning. I'm totally against fining somebody on a first offense, even if an officer were to try to educate a group of people and then they still didn't disperse. I'd like that education to have a chance to stick with a few of them and then move on. And then if you see that same group again on the second offense, I think then you fine them with a $100 civil ticket, go up from there. But we're at a very critical time to be making a policy decision like this. There was a sincere amount of backlash, and I'm not afraid of the backlash in the city, but it's just something to recognize. And I think that's because people feel, the vast majority of people feel that they're already following along and that the ordinance is either unfair to them, or I don't want to say it's a slap in the face, but there's all kinds of angles to consider on this one. Yeah, my feelings are pretty mixed, but yes, we have an option from Aaron, which is to wait on it until we can talk to Chief Taylor at our May 4th meeting, which is in 2 weeks. And I don't think that social distancing is going to disappear in 2 weeks. I think if anything, the executive order is going to get another addendum after addendum until we find another new normal where businesses are allowed to quasi-operate with strict protocols, and there'll still be a level of enforcement to that order that'll have to take place. So I don't think in 2 weeks the ordinance is a void issue, but I don't feel like it's in a place right now where we should approve it. I guess I'd default to any other board member that wanted to make a remark. Anybody? Jessica, Stan, Jonathan, Aaron? We want to move on and ask Jessica, sorry.
No, I mean, I was just going to say, I would approve it with those edits if we adjusted the fines for offense 1, offense 2, offense 3. If offense 1 was purely education, offense 2, $100, offense 3, whatever that next level was.
Mhm.
But I'm also willing to wait if that's what everybody wants to do.
Aaron, how do you feel?
I feel like I'd want, Chief Taylor also to weigh in on that possible change and what kind of impacts that might have for his team to be able to enforce. And yeah, I don't feel like I have the information I need to be able to vote confidently on it as written or even with changes at this point. I do understand the value and the timeliness of it. So I, say that with, this was a tough one to kind of mull through. But I think if people are on the fence, I would recommend that we wait, knowing what waiting means for an additional 2 weeks, potentially.
Okay, Jonathan, do you want to wait or do you want to vote it down? How do you feel?
We can wait. I'd like to hear from Chief Taylor, you know, what's actually going on, you know. or the
Dan?
reasons, whatever.
Dan, what do you want to do?
I'll wait and talk to Taylor, see what he has to give us for information on how big of an impact it is.
Okay, so let's schedule, and there's 2 weeks of developments that could take place, so this ordinance could either prove its worth in gold, or we could still be sitting here in 2 weeks wondering if it's valuable, and then that'll kind of lend itself its own to this. Let's wait, invite the chief in for May 4th, and hopefully his schedule will allow it. Okay, so moving on, town manager report. Got a financial report from Anna Borden, our wonderful treasurer, and Carrie Johnson, our equally wonderful town manager.
So before we do that, I just want to briefly go over how operations are changing this week based on the governor's press conference at 11:30. Because within 30 minutes of that call, we were getting numerous calls about when they could come in. So we did change this week to DPW is now coming in on Wednesday. The crew's been out for almost a whole month, but they're coming in groups of 2, going to be socially distant, observing all of the required rules that Alan and I went over earlier today. So, I mean, we still had our plows on our trucks, things like that. So you will see a few people out behaving, of course. Planning zoning is still working remotely. However, AJ and Jen are now working 5 days a week each. Like Jen is working in the afternoon, AJ's in the morning. Becky's coming in to work Saturday for a pretty long day to try to catch up. And Anna's allowing people in by appointment only if they're wearing masks and sanitize and are asymptomatic. Next week, I expect that Becky will have actual office hours in the office. And we are going to likely leave our doors unlocked so that the building permits can be posted in the lobby, but the actual town clerk's office and maybe even upstairs, unless the governor changes all my plans on Friday again. We're not necessarily going to allow people to just openly walk into the town hall yet because of the risk. So I'll be eager to see what he says, the governor, on Friday, but as of right now, that's roughly our schedule for the next 2 weeks. We're also going to slowly turn things on, but assessing has been happening remotely and pretty well, and AJ's been checking their voicemails, so people are getting responses. They're just maybe not getting responses immediately, but they're getting calls back and emails back. So you guys know what in case there's somebody watching this that hasn't generally watched it, I'm continuing to monitor the 3 governor press conferences every week, the 1 regional Franklin County emergency management meeting, and the state EMD calls on Fridays. I'm going to report that once a week unless somebody wants me to really bomb their inbox again. I know it's a lot of information, but it's relevant. So we're updating the COVID tab on our website daily. And with anything relevant and actually newsworthy, I will continue to send it to you. But, you know, unemployment insurance was a big topic of today's press conference, and it's still critical for people to understand. And I think it's being missed by some that there's an existing system, and there's also the new PUA system, or the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance for the self-employed. That system, because it's brand new and was being built, should be online tomorrow and there's a number that people can call that are part of that program, but not part of the existing program. And they say that they should be able to open and input their claims by the end of the week. The UI commissioner or secretary, I can't remember what his title is, said they originally, before this pandemic, had 15 people on staff processing the regular UI system. They now are going to have almost 200 by the end of this week. So they're taking active steps to address the fact that they realize that there was thousands of people that still have not gotten a UI.
You saw the governor's good leadership come in full force Friday into the weekend, and it culminated this morning. He ordered the Department of Labor to clear its backlog of anybody who qualified for unemployment but hadn't received any benefit. And then he said if they hadn't cleared its entire backlog by Saturday at midnight. He authorized the Treasury and then helped Treasurer Pierce in the Finance Department, along with other Treasury staff, to process over 8,300 checks for $1,200 apiece, which are 2-week prepayments of the $600 supplement that comes with the CARES Act. So 8,300, a little bit over 8,300 checks were delivered to USPS by the governor himself this morning that he helped process with the treasurer. That was pretty neat. So people will get some money hopefully here in a couple of days.
That's all I have for that. I will be quiet now. And Anna's going to go over some of the finances. It's an estimate, clearly. I'm going to qualify that.
So going into FY20, we had a fund balance of $587,864. We did use $200 voted by the voters to reduce the tax rate, which left us a fund balance of $387,864. There was some question as to whether I thought that we would have a shortfall come June 30th. At this point, I don't believe we will. Taxes are coming in pretty heavily right now since the last due date is May 15th. We do have two electronic transfers that we process for $500,000 each. Given that, I think we're tracking revenue-wise the same as we did last year. The May payment, obviously, to the school will be about $200,000 less than the first 3 quarters, and that's due to the late filers, the homesteads. So I think we're in good shape to finish this year on the plus side with no deficit. Having said that, I've heard from a lot of people that they might not be able to pay their taxes by the due date. And last week I had a quorum of Board of Abatement that made a motion to forgive the interest and penalty only on this May payment, which will save the taxpayers, the ones that can't pay, 9%. And we'll treat each one on an individual basis as far as that goes going forward. They'll have to apply to the Board of Abatement. That's a tough one though, because of social distancing. Other than that, there were some questions about whether the state payments will come through on the July bills that I'm going to mail out. And as far as the tax department, they're still saying it's a go for July 1. So I usually get those downloads prior to mailing the bills out on July 15th. They also, as of now, said that we will get the education tax rate as of July 1, since those budgets were already voted on by the taxpayers and approved for FY21. So that's about all I can give you right now.
That's a good update.
Yeah. I mean, we're in good shape in that we have quarterly tax payments and 3 of them have already been collected. That also helps us as opposed to having our one due date coming up.
Anybody have any questions for Anna? Okay, everybody collectively shook their head, Anna. Nice job. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
She can see the video. She just doesn't have a camera on her.
You
Oh,
can't
well, hi, Anna.
You can't see her, but she can see you. Perfect. So the next one is just information as we normally do. Notice the select board that an Act 250 permit is being processed. The third one, the final one, our capital improvement plan and the priority list were meant to just assign you homework, more or less. Give you.
Gary, can I speak to that for a second?
Please do.
So Ned sent me a 1-pager, an email.
Nice.
I'm going to ask him to share it with Carrie, and then if Carrie approves of it, we'll share it with the rest of the board. But he had broken down the CIP that the Planning Commission had worked on with Parks and Rec, Public Works, and a new town hall and those other cost centers. And he ran the figures based on a 15% And then he ran another line based on a 30% reduction in expected revenue to the LOT to see just how recession-proof that plan was. And he said, he proved to me, at least on paper, and I have to analyze it further, that even with a 30% reduction to local option tax revenue, that plan balanced out over 10 years. And that's not with no growth factor, the revenue year to year. It's just what we got. I think FY18, roughly 850,000, I think was the figure, minus 30%. That figure every year is the revenue. So if we could get Ned to share that with Gary, I think that might be something interesting to chew the fat on.
And Carrie, was the plan still for us to get you like our top 5 plans for the, like, as the select board members, what our top 5 priorities might be for the next year?
It wasn't really clear that you as a board came up with a one cohesive plan. I think that would be a great starting point, and that's why I sent you what the board had done the last 2 years, because without any framework, I felt like you wouldn't get consensus on anything if you didn't have framework. But so you guys, I really, that's the clarity I would love tonight. Are you going to do that? Are you going to look at the list?
Okay, let's get our top 5 individual priorities for the town as individuals. Email them to Carrie by Sunday night. Does that work?
On that form.
There we go.
I know I could probably share a screen, but that was quicker.
Oh, wait, I missed it. I was like, what form?
Sorry. So this one that was in your packets,
Oh, okay.
I can send it electronically.
Jen can send it electronically, so you can just do it. But on the top, it says FY21 capital improvement project list. And you can add something to it as well. That's just what was done the previous years. It's 2 pages, actually.
Let's all review that, make tweaks to it, and then try to assign priority 1 through 5, our top 5 priorities as individuals. Communicate that back to Carrie. Try to formulate that into a list and see if anybody has anything that they both picked.
So the capital improvement plan, you're going to be asked to look at again, maybe after next week's meeting, but that needs to be approved. It's a 5-year framework, fluid planning document that we use going forward. So it does need to be reviewed. This one is changed from the one you saw back in December and January because it doesn't include using local option tax to pay for plow equipment and fire department apparatus. It really focuses more on other infrastructure. We went back and forth, a number of times. It got a little confusing there, but this one does not use the LOT funds for those purposes.
Fair enough. Okay, so let's review that and then get back to it on May 4th. Does that work?
And the
Well,
Well, then the top 5 priorities. I mean, we want to do that, get their let's fill out that paperwork, top 5 priorities, email to Carrie, hopefully by like early next week.
well, no, so you have a joint planning commission, a joint meeting with the planning commission on Monday, the 27th.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna be talking about it then. So
Let's
I'm
try to do it by
this
Thursday
week.
night.
Yeah,
Okay, Thursday night.
I mean, it's fluid. It's not like you can change your mind after. It's just an idea to get a.
Yeah, that's helpful because you have a starting point to launch your discussion.
And the planning commission, we moved up our next regular meeting from, it was going to be the Tuesday after our special meeting. We moved it up to tomorrow, so that we, as the planning commission, can also get on the same page as far as what we thought our priorities might be. So that way the select board, by knowing what our general priorities are on the select board, we can have that conversation and see where we line up with the planning commission.
Aaron, have you guys organized as a PC yet?
No, we haven't had our organization meeting yet.
Okay, so that's fair. Why don't we do that Thursday night,
Mhm.
and then we'll synthesize it and send it back out to everybody for our Monday meeting. And-
Sounds like a plan.
Perfect.
And so if you need anything else, you should have gotten a electronic, did I send the RFP for the police thing out yet?
No.
All right, so we're gonna send you this week, the request for proposal for the police contract itself, just so you can review it as a starting point, because the last thing we should talk about is, I think we can meet at 4 or 4:30 on Monday to talk about the request for the police proposal. The joint meeting was scheduled for 6, so I can't change that now that we've scheduled it really, but I don't know that you need 2 full hours for the police department, but you can let me know what you need on that.
Call it 4:30, and then if we end a little early, we can take a break before 6.
Correct.
Does that work for Erin?
That work for
Erin?
everybody?
The question was Erin, and Erin, I think, sent me an email that she thought it would be okay for 4:30.
I can make that work. My hours are going to typically wrap up at 4:30. So I think if I just go in a little bit earlier that day, then I can get out a little early and make it in time to log in and Zoom with you all. Hopefully my camera will work next week.
Okay, does that sound like a plan? Police RFP. And the other thing that's not on here conspicuously on this select board agenda was the town hall project manager thing. It got a little crazy around here and that just fell off the plate. Not actually intentionally, but I'm glad it didn't, because I wasn't sure we would be able to discuss it all at the same time with the police stuff. So the police RFP is gonna go out, and on May 4th, you're gonna talk about the town hall project manager contract.
So schedule, we've got regular meetings Monday, May 4th and Monday, May 18th. We're gonna look at guidance, but I would expect to Zoom both of those and maybe look at some socially distanced with face covering meetings resuming sometime in the summer, depending on how things go. But this seems to be working fine, and it's the safest thing for everybody involved. I also don't want to create an environment where the public feels it's okay to come to town hall to view one of our meetings, and then all of a sudden we end up with more than 10 people in the room. So
Yeah.
that's going to be something that we monitor. I think as long as there's a max of 10 people allowed in the room, at least a few of us are going to have to come in by Zoom, if not all of us. That's a fair thing to do. We've got the 27th at 4:30 for the police RFP. Be an interesting discussion. There'll be some good reading this week. Our joint select board and planning commission meeting will be at 6. So that'll be a full night. I won't be able to do this standing thing. It's going to be interesting.
And sometimes I bought food, but you're all gonna be at your own houses, so sorry.
407 Patton Crosby Road.
Oh, yeah, thanks.
I don't have much. We all saw what was in the news today with the local PD. Nothing to comment on. If anybody receives any contact from any media outlets, if any more information becomes available and it turns into more of a story, don't even redirect them to Carrie or I. I think the appropriate thing to do right now is to say there's no comment from anybody from the town whatsoever. It's not our issue.
Well, they shouldn't be calling every select board member, but some outlets might try.
No, definitely, it's happened.
Yep.
Be surprised. Yeah. But other than that, we're gonna have the chief come in on May 4th. We'll revisit that ordinance. And does anybody have any other business?
I just have one quick thing from the Parks Committee. They're going to start working up on the mountain bike trails at the town forest in May, just 2 guys at a time. And it should be finishing up this spring. And there's some trails up there that have really uninspiring names like Top Loop, Lower Loop. So we had this idea of start to engage people on social media or our website and just posting a map and saying, send us your trail ideas, and maybe somebody will come up with something really creative that we could use up there.
Trail
And then
naming.
Love that. That's exactly what we need right now.
Yeah, so I'll help promote that through Rise Vermont, and then we can share on the town page too. But it should be good. And then when this all clears over, hopefully we can have some sort of grand opening up there and let people see the trails. And I know the mountain bike club has been really involved, and they're excited to do some work up there too. So it's something good to look forward to.
Yeah.
I don't know if, I mean, Jessica and I are aware of this, and so is Alan, but Brooks Scratcher, is that the name? Scatcher?
Oh, yeah.
I always
Scatcher.
mispronounce his last name. The work that he was planning to do in May, he was planning to get to us in June, but the work was canceled, so he moved up his work for us a little earlier.
I had one thing to bring up under other business. I should have brought it up earlier. I have an idea for Alan, and it's for probably late May, early June. I know the salt shed won't be up by then. A lot of people are doing like parades with their cars, with signage and whatnot for little kids' birthdays. You name it. I mean, I saw somebody turn 70 over the weekend. They had a procession of like 100 cars of family and friends drive by the person's house and wave and yell from the car and say hi, and that's really cool. A lot of people around town want to see the new garage, and we can't allow anybody in there probably until we get a vaccine at this point. I mean, when we really think about it, is it safe for the employees to really allow a group, potentially hundreds of people on one given day to go through the shop? I'm wondering if, when the weather warms up, if on a Saturday for a set time, we could open the doors to the shop and maybe bring in a fire truck and have it like hooked up but not turned on to the fill station, and maybe bring out all of our cool equipment and raise the buckets and have it all set up, and then let people do an organized loop through the big parking lot and then back out to Brigham Road.
In their
Kind
car?
of like a big rig day for kids. And a chance for taxpayers to just look in the shop, experience how large it is, and then maybe we could even have some pictures of the offices blown up and put outside for people to look at from their cars. With so many social events being canceled, that if we can come up with even one thing that works for the BDH and CDC guidance and gives people a cool opportunity to get their kids in the car and go do something that's safe but also fun. I'm interested in what you think about that, Alan, and then Carrie and the rest of the board.
I say let's just wait and see how things are turning out. I mean, you'd be surprised. I've been going into the office. There's a lot of town residents driving out back and coming. They're already looking at the outside of the building. I'd say let's just think on it for a minute or two.
Or maybe through May.
Yeah, I mean,
I'd like to have an open house.
I mean, I'd like to do something for the kids mostly. I mean, they're cooped up in their house. They're not getting to do anything fun. There's no playgrounds that we can use in town. And Swanton's Big Rig Day that they do over at their municipal complex is always so well attended. And the kids they love it. And we've got a lot of the same equipment that we wouldn't be able to let them climb into or even get out of their cars to take a really close up and personal look at, but they'd be able to look.
well, that's the thing is I've talked about having big rig days and stuff, but it's kind of like waving a lollipop in front of a kid and not letting him put it in his mouth.
Well, I mean, I just don't know that we're ever going to get to the point where we can have a big rig day before we get a vaccine. I mean, long term, realistically, that's...
Before early fall, I think we can have an open house. I think you got to stay positive and just wait a while.
I don't know. I mean, I might push again if something comes up in May and the consensus seems, because there's going to be some long-term consensus among our nation's top health experts as far as what this thing will look like through the end. And if Alan, you're right, I hope you are right. If you're not right, I'm going to get you, and we're going to do this. But
Just kidding.
no.
I didn't hear
All right.
anybody else on the board weigh in though, so I don't know.
Yeah, what does everybody else think? You want to wait, see what happens in May?
I mean, we're only in April. Let's just give it a little time here.
I'm gonna have to mute Alan now.
I'm okay with waiting. I think it sounds like a really fun idea, but we can give it a little more time and see what happens. It is only April.
I'm okay with waiting too. Of course, I'm picturing are we going to have a fender bender in the parking lot because we get distracted drivers looking at the trucks?
That was so fun.
My mind went, but I'm good with waiting, and if we can figure out a safe way to do it, sure, let's think about it.
Yeah, I
Any
mean,
other business? Alan?
the only thing other that you might want to think about is if we do get bids and we start getting construction equipment there and this.
Well, that's a different story. That's why I was thinking late May before we would get to work on that at this point. You know, we still would do a full open house whenever it was safe to do it. I'm just saying for the interim to give people a reason to get in their cars and have something safe to do. It wouldn't be in place of. I wouldn't rob you. I mean, that's going to be a good community moment.
I get it. I get your enthusiasm. I just want to, let's just give it a couple weeks.
All right, we'll talk about it on May 4th. Alan said so. Any other business? Okay, anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion, we adjourn the select board meeting of April 20th.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Okay, everybody, have a good night.
Wait.